Okay, you guys, so I don't want to ignore the obvious right now because I can see that a lot of you are watching my videos because you've showed up on my channel, you've discovered that this is long form TikTok, you've discovered that if you ask me questions, I'll answer them, and you've discovered, like, wow, that's a really Mr. Roblox over there. You've discovered that a lot of the things I say are a very interesting take, and it's not what you expected to hear out of my mouth, right? And I do my best to be tempered and to be measured and to be objective at all costs, because I really think that the world right now is lacking all of those things, all of those qualities, especially when people are having dialogue about uh, difficult issues, issues in the news, issues that have to do with politics, issues that have to do with political leaders, right? But at the end of the day, I think if you've watched any amount of my content, you know that I have a viewpoint that there is the people down here, and then there are people up here, doing their best to either misinform, divide people, get people set against each other and distract people. And I don't think that that's a really an aberrant viewpoint anymore. I've had this viewpoint since like the 80s and the 90s. I've often been skeptical and suspicious of very loud authority, right? Because some of the best authority we've ever had in this country, you know, it it leads very differently, and you know it when you see it. And I'm not going to say anything that there obviously are some people that love what's going on right now. I understand that. And if people think that we're going to solve these problems by constantly trying to dunk on each other or constantly trying to scream at people or shout people down or remove them from a space and remove dialogue and remove conversation, you should know that that's probably the how we got here. That's probably how we got here. It probably has a large, probably has a lot to do with how we got here. So I do my best to avoid that. I do my best to be, honestly, for lack of a better term, inclusive in the conversation that we have with all parties. Because at the bottom, because at the end of the day, most people don't realize it, but most people are down here. Some people have this weird viewpoint that they're up here, or they're there, or they're there, or but the reality is that most people economically live in this life or somewhere down here. And that's really a sad reality because we're so deluded by our own comforts that we think we have more than we do. And I think that's a dangerous place to be. Okay, right? All of that said, I needed to say that up front. And, obviously I want to address the obvious in the room. And it is clearly that situation in Georgia. We are going to hope that the large scale $2 billion investment that Hyundai has alone in just that one building doesn't turn to dust, and that they can figure out a way to manage the relationships, continue to build infrastructure, and continue to have positive relationships with the United States. Why? Because if you've been reading the comments, you know that there are a lot of informed people. There was someone from Hyundai on the thread. Someone from Hyundai was on the threads talking about, in the commentary on two of the videos, about the fact that what they're seeing on at the area right now, and it's not good. And people need to realize that Hyundai, they build the power grid in America right now on the West Coast is going through an infrastructure power grid overhaul. Did you know that? A lot of the cities and a lot of the different areas in the state of California, and I imagine it's like that all across the United States, which is why Hyundai and Samsung and SK and all these people are investing so heavily in America because they know that they're going to redo our entire power grid. They know they're going to install all these cars that we're switching to for the next 50 years, that we're going to an all-electric, non-fossil fuel world, and they're going to reap the riches from helping to get it off the ground in the United States. And the goal is that long term, it'll make us a better nation and a more modern nation, and we'll be able to handle the loads that we're putting on the system. So when you stop and you think about what the end goal is, and you realize that these relationships are far more important for the United States, then probably the United States would let on. And, I understand you're going to hear some of the people in the comments saying that it's the opposite, that, South Korea, like they need America more than like we need them. And that's just not true. With the level of development and the financial backing and the training that's going on right now, um, they're poised to improve the overall quality of life for most everyday Americans. And that's the piece that's being underestimated. All of the Chaebol that you're hearing about, the families, that are, that have these enormously deep pockets that are almost like royalties amongst themselves in that small country. They they manage and send over their own people, and those people are like family members to them, and a lot of them are family members, because they're engineers, and some of them were educated here in America in the UC system or in Texas, because you may not realize this, but a lot of people from South Korea, they love going to Texas, and they love going to the Texas A&M and like the University of Texas. So there's just a lot of things that Americans are unclear about, and the reason for a lot of the electric infrastructure that's going on is massive. It is massive, and it is South Korea's bet. While China is trying to bet on what they're doing in Africa, South Korea knows that North Korea's position isn't going to hold forever, and they'll eventually unify, into the capitalist system that they have, which is the stronger of the two, and that their long-term interest is America, much like what China is for Africa. And if you've been watching the news, you know that China's interest in Africa hasn't really been panning out. And the last thing that is needed throughout the Pacific Rim is for the things that are going on in America to not work out for Korea, because all it's going to do is make everybody reclance and slow down and take and play a more careful game. But one thing that we are learning from this is the corporatization of government is happening right in front of us. The corporatization of government is becoming everything, and we are seeing it. We are seeing it right in front of our faces happening. And oftentimes I think we joke. We always say, like, you want to know how they got to Blade Runner in Blade Runner? Like, you want to know how that world became like that? Korea rebuilding America is probably one large piece of how America starts looking like Blade Runner. Go back and watch that movie, and it's very prescient and it's very telling, and you get to see how things end up for America. Now, I also want to say one last thing. Don't underestimate in any way, shape, or form American ingenuity and American creativity and American brilliance, because we still hold the reins and run the game and run the table on inventiveness and creativity. We are still the ones that seem to be able to put our hand down inside Pandora's box of creativity and come out with the next best thing. We keep doing it. How long we can keep doing it for is anybody's guess. And the reasons why America has always been a creative place and other countries struggle with creativity, that is the question of the ages, isn't it? And people are saying, oh, everyone's catching up and surpassing us. Yeah, they are. They're maximizing their technology. They're living in peace. Their taxes and their wealth is going back into their communities and back into their towns and back into parks, while our government, has had a long history of not wanting to do that, right? Because we believe that civic improvement in America right now somehow is socialism. We believe that if we make life better for ourselves, then oops, we're doing it for our neighbor too. And we can't have that because our neighbor looks different than us. And the comments you're seeing that racism is expensive are very true. Racism is absolutely expensive, and this is what it cost. And for anybody thinking that it's not that, you're fooling yourself and you're lying. Okay? So here's tonight's message to you. And like I've said on another video, I really would hope that people can shrug off the old clothes of anti-intellectualism, because it's not helping anybody. Okay, all the best.